I'm Ashley, 34 years old, and last year I heard the words no one wants to hear. You have breast cancer. As a single mother to my precious 8-year-old Lily, the world stopped spinning. My first instinct was to call my parents despite our strained relationship. Their response? We're busy with Madison's wedding preparations. Can this wait? That moment crystallized a lifetime of emotional abandonment, right when I needed them most. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt abandoned by those who should love you most, please subscribe to join our community of survivors and supporters. Growing up in a pristine suburban home in Connecticut, I learned early that appearances mattered more than feelings in the Bennett household. My parents, Catherine and Richard, were respected pillars of our community. Dad, a corporate attorney, Mom, the perfect hostess who chaired every committee at the country club. From the outside, we looked like the ideal American family. Inside our home was a different story. My childhood memories aren't filled with warm hugs or bedtime stories. Instead, I remember the constant pressure to achieve, to make the family look good. Stand up straight, Ashley. Your grades reflect on this family. Why can't you be more like Madison? Madison was my cousin, my Aunt Carol's daughter, and the golden child of our extended family. 3 years younger than me, Madison somehow embodied everything my parents wanted: graceful, compliant, and socially adept. Despite this, Madison and I were close as children. When our families got together for holidays or summer barbecues, we'd sneak away from the adults and create our own world of imagination. She was the sister I never had, and for years, our bond transcended the unhealthy comparisons our parents created. By 16, I developed a protective shell around my heart. I learned not to ask my parents to attend my school plays or art exhibitions because the empty seats hurt less than their excuses. I taught myself to drive because Dad was always working late. I bandaged my own knees when I fell because Mom couldn't stand the sight of blood. Independence wasn't a choice, it was survival. At 19, I gathered my savings from 3 years of after-school jobs and moved to Boston for college. My parents seemed almost relieved when I left. They helped financially. Paying tuition was expected for people of their standing, but emotional support remained non-existent. Phone calls home were brief and superficial. Visits were tense affairs filled with critiques about my weight, my career choice in graphic design, my bohemian apartment. I met Brian during my senior year of college. He was charming, attentive, and his affection felt like water in a desert. We married when I was 24, and for the first time, I believed I had found my real family. My parents attended our wedding but left early, citing a long drive home. They didn't stay to help clean up or to send us off. Madison was my maid of honor and cried more than my mother did. When I became pregnant with Lily at 26, my parents' response was tepid concern about my career being derailed. They visited exactly once after her birth, stayed at a hotel despite our guest room, and held their granddaughter like she was made of glass before returning home after just 2 days. Meanwhile, my marriage was crumbling. Brian had started staying late at work, taking weekend business trips, and growing distant. When Lily was 3, I found text messages from his coworker on his phone. The divorce was quick but painful. Brian moved to Seattle for work and sees Lily twice a year at most. His child support checks arrive on time, but they barely cover daycare costs. I rebuilt my life as a single mother in Boston, working remotely as a graphic designer for a marketing firm while raising Lily. We created our own little world of pancake sundaes, playground adventures, and bedtime stories. I maintained minimal contact with my parents, sending obligatory birthday cards and occasional photos of Lily. Our phone calls remained surface level, with my parents asking perfunctory questions about their granddaughter, but never really listening to the answers. Our last family gathering before my diagnosis was Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Madison had just gotten engaged to Tyler, a surgeon from a good family, as my mother kept emphasizing. The entire day revolved around wedding plans, with my parents fawning over Madison's princess-cut diamond and Tyler's impressive credentials. Lily and I were essentially background decorations, only acknowledged when my mother wanted to show off her darling granddaughter to her friends who stopped by for drinks. On the drive home, Lily asked innocently, "Mommy, why doesn't Grandma hug us like she hugs Cousin Madison?" I had no answer that wouldn't break her heart, so I simply said, "Everyone shows love differently, sweetie." But inside, the familiar ache of being the family afterthought burned fresh. I tried to maintain some connection with my parents despite the disappointments, not for myself anymore, but for Lily. I wanted her to have grandparents, even imperfect ones. I sent school pictures, artwork Lily made, and updates about her activities. The responses were always the same: brief acknowledgments and redirections to news about Madison's life achievements or my parents' social calendar. Little did I know that this lifelong pattern of emotional neglect would soon be tested in ways I never imagined. January in Boston brings a particular kind of cold that seeps into your bones. On a frigid Tuesday morning, I dropped Lily at school and headed to my annual physical, that routine appointment I almost canceled because deadlines were piling up at work. My doctor, Dr. Miller, had been treating me for years and always maintained a casual, friendly demeanor during our appointments. That day was different. "There's a small lump here," she said, her fingers pressing gently against my left breast. "It's probably nothing, but we should get a mammogram to be sure." Her voice remained steady, professional, but I caught the slight shift in her eyes. Within 48 hours, I was having a mammogram, then an ultrasound, then a biopsy. The radiologist's face gave away the results before the official call came. 5 days after my routine physical, I sat alone in Dr. Miller's office as she explained my diagnosis: stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, breast cancer. "We caught it relatively early," she said, arranging papers on her desk. "The prognosis is good with immediate treatment. You'll need surgery followed by chemotherapy, possibly radiation." I nodded mechanically, asking appropriate questions about treatment plans and survival rates while a strange buzzing filled my ears. I was 34 years old with an 8-year-old daughter who needed me. Cancer wasn't supposed to be part of our story. After leaving the doctor's office, I sat in my car in the parking garage for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was too much to process, too much to plan. Lily needed dinner. Work deadlines loomed. Bills had to be paid. And somewhere in that mental chaos was the terrifying question: what if I die? That evening, after serving Lily her favorite mac and cheese, I sat her down for a conversation no parent ever wants to have. "Sweetie, Mommy needs to tell you something important," I began, working hard to keep my voice steady. "I went to the doctor today, and they found out I'm sick. It's called cancer, and I'll need special medicine to make it go away." Lily's blue eyes widened. "Like when I had strep throat and needed the pink medicine? Kind of, but my medicine is stronger and might make me feel tired or sick sometimes. I might lose my hair for a while too." She considered this seriously, then reached out to touch my hair. "It'll grow back, right? Like when you cut it short last summer." "Yes, baby, it will grow back," I promised, fighting back tears. "Then I'll help you, Mommy," she declared with the beautiful certainty only children possess. "I can make you soup and read you stories when you feel bad, just like you do for me." That night, after Lily fell asleep, I finally let myself cry, quiet, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I needed to call my parents. Despite everything, some childish part of me still craved their comfort, still hoped that a crisis of this magnitude might awaken some dormant parental instinct in them. The next morning, I dropped Lily at school and sat in my car to make the call. My mother answered on the 4th ring. "Ashley? This is unexpected. Is everything all right?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to tell you and Dad something important. I've been diagnosed with breast cancer." There was a pause, then, "Oh dear. That's concerning. But you've always been healthy," I'm sure it's not serious. It's stage 2, Mom. I need surgery and chemotherapy. The treatments start next week. Next week? Well, the timing is rather inconvenient. Your father and I are completely overwhelmed with Madison's wedding preparations. The rehearsal dinner venue just canceled on us, and we're scrambling to find alternatives. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom, I have cancer. Yes, I heard you, Ashley. And of course we're concerned. But surely this can wait until after the wedding? It's only 6 weeks away, and we simply can't focus on anything else right now. Madison would be devastated if anything overshadowed her special day. The casual dismissal of my diagnosis hit harder than the diagnosis itself. I don't think cancer cares about Madison's wedding timeline, Mom. There's no need for sarcasm, she replied, her voice cooling. Call us after the wedding and we'll see what we can do to help. Your father's on the other line about the florist. I should go. Sure, I whispered. Go deal with the flowers. The line went dead, and with it, any illusion I still harbored about my place in my parents' lives. I sat in stunned silence, watching a group of birds pecking at crumbs in the school parking lot, feeling more alone than I ever had. That afternoon, I called Rachel, my closest coworker, and shared my diagnosis. Without hesitation, she offered to drive me to appointments and help with Lily. I called Lily's teacher, Mrs. Patel, who promised to keep an eye on her and be sensitive to any behavioral changes. I called Mrs. Wilson, our 70-year-old neighbor who had become a surrogate grandmother to Lily, and she immediately volunteered to help with after-school care during my treatments. Within 24 hours, I had more practical support lined up from near strangers than my own parents had offered in my entire life. The irony wasn't lost on me. That weekend, I created spreadsheets for everything: treatment schedules, meal plans for Lily, work deadlines I needed to renegotiate, bills and insurance forms to manage. I applied for FMLA leave and disability insurance. I updated my will and designated Rachel as Lily's guardian if the unthinkable happened, knowing Brian's nomadic lifestyle made him an unreliable option. I didn't call my parents again. Instead, I watched their social media posts about Madison's upcoming wedding, photos of cake tastings, flower arrangements, and venue tours, all accompanied by captions about how blessed they were to have such a wonderful family. That first night after my diagnosis, after finishing my planning and putting on a brave face for Lily all day, I curled into a ball on my bathroom floor and sobbed until my throat was raw. Not just because I had cancer, but because in the moment I most needed a mother, mine had chosen a wedding centerpiece over me. My first chemotherapy session fell on a rainy Tuesday in February. Rachel drove me to the hospital, her normally chatty personality subdued by the gravity of the situation. The oncology department was painted in calming blues and greens, an attempt to soften the reality of what happened there. The nurse who checked me in, Diane, had kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled through her mask. First time, she asked, gently guiding me to a recliner in a room with 5 other patients. I nodded, trying to ignore the trembling in my hands. You've got this, she assured me, expertly inserting the 4. One day at a time. The infusion took 4 hours. I watched as clear liquid dripped from the bag into my veins, wondering how something so innocuous-looking could simultaneously be my savior and my tormentor. Around me, other patients dozed, read books, or chatted quietly with their companions. An elderly woman knitted a scarf while her husband read the newspaper beside her. A middle-aged man worked on his laptop while his sister scrolled through her phone. Everyone had someone. Except me. Diane checked on me regularly, bringing ginger ale for nausea and warm blankets when I started shivering. By the time Rachel picked me up, I was exhausted but relieved to have the first treatment behind me. It wasn't so bad, I lied when she asked, not wanting her to worry. That night, the nausea hit like a tidal wave. I spent hours curled around the toilet, trying to be quiet so I wouldn't wake Lily. By morning, I was weak and shaky but forced myself to get up, make Lily breakfast, and see her off to school with Mrs. Wilson, who had come to help. "You look terrible," dear Mrs. Wilson said bluntly. "Go back to bed. I'll handle the school run and bring Lily back this afternoon." I was too sick to argue. By my third chemo session, I had fallen into a rhythm. Treatment days were followed by 2 days of misery, then a gradual improvement until the next round. Rachel, Mrs. Wilson, and a rotation of colleagues and acquaintances who had become friends through this ordeal ensured Lily was cared for and that meals appeared in our refrigerator. The physical changes came swiftly and mercilessly. 2 weeks after my first treatment, I was brushing my hair when entire clumps came out in my hand. Rather than watch it fall out gradually, I asked Rachel to shave my head. We made it a party for Lily's sake, with ice cream and silly wigs Rachel had ordered online. "You look like an alien, Mommy," Lily giggled as I modeled a purple mohawk wig. "Well, I come in peace," I replied, pulling her into a hug. Later that night, alone in my bathroom, I stared at my reflection, bald, eyebrowless, with dark circles under my eyes, and hardly recognized myself. I wondered if my parents would even know me if they saw me now. Working through treatment was its own special hell. My company allowed me to work remotely and reduce my hours, but the lost income strained our already tight budget. Even with insurance, the medical bills mounted alarmingly. Each time I opened another statement, the cold reality of facing cancer as a single parent with no family support became clearer. Some days, the unfairness of it all overwhelmed me. Why me? Why now? Why alone? On those days, I allowed myself 1 hour of self-pity, usually during my lunch break when Lily was at school. I'd cry, scream into a pillow, or write furious journal entries about my parents' abandonment. Then I'd wash my face, reapply the eyebrows I'd learned to draw on, and return to being supermom and diligent employee. Through social media, I watched as Madison's wedding approached. My parents posted pictures of dress fittings, tastings, and showers. In each photo, they beamed with pride, looking happier than I'd ever seen them. Not once did they call to check on me. On Madison's wedding day, Lily brought me my phone, asking if Grandma had sent pictures. I showed her the Facebook posts, carefully hiding the pain their silence caused. Madison looked beautiful in her gown, and I felt a pang of genuine happiness for my cousin despite everything. I sent a congratulatory text that received a brief thanks. "So happy," in response. Nothing from my parents. The lowest point came during my 4th round of chemo. My white blood cell count had dropped dangerously low, and a simple cold Lily brought home from school sent me to the emergency room with a 103-degree fever. Sepsis was a real risk for immunocompromised patients like me. "Is there someone we should call?" the ER doctor asked as they admitted me. I gave them Rachel's number along with Mrs. Wilson's as a backup for Lily. The doctor frowned, clearly expecting me to list a spouse or parent. "No family," he pressed. "None available," I replied, too exhausted to explain. I spent 3 terrifying nights in the hospital, separated from Lily, wondering if this infection would be what killed me instead of the cancer. The nurses were angels, bringing me extra blankets and sitting with me when the fear became overwhelming. One night nurse named Gloria held my hand as I sobbed about my parents. "Family isn't always blood," she told me, her Caribbean accent rich and comforting. "Family is who shows up. And honey, you've got people showing up for you." She was right. Rachel had taken emergency leave to care for Lily. Mrs. Wilson visited daily with home-cooked meals. My boss sent a massive arrangement of cheerful sunflowers. Lily's teacher organized a meal train among school parents. My blog followers sent cards and care packages. I was alone, but not abandoned. When I finally returned home, Lily presented me with a shoebox full of drawings she'd made during my hospital stay. Each picture showed the 2 of us doing things we loved. Baking cookies, reading books, walking in the park. but in every drawing, she'd colored my head bald and drawn a cape on my shoulders. "Mrs. Wilson said you're fighting bad guys in your body," she explained. "So I made you a superhero." I held her tight, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the feeling of her small arms around my neck. For her, I would endure anything. For her, I would survive. As winter turned to spring, I continued the brutal treatment regimen. Some days, simply getting out of bed felt like climbing Mount Everest. My body betrayed me in new ways each week: mouth sores, peripheral neuropathy that made my fingers tingle painfully, extreme fatigue that sleep couldn't touch. Throughout it all, Lily was my constant, my reason to push through each day. She adapted to our new normal with remarkable resilience, learning to be quiet when I needed rest, helping with simple chores, and proudly explaining to her friends that her mom was kicking cancers, but on medicine days, as Lily called them, she would carefully prepare a backpack with items she thought would comfort me during treatment: her favorite stuffed bear, drawings, a small blanket, and picture books she could read to me if I got bored. The child was mothering the mother, a role reversal that broke my heart even as it filled me with pride. For months into treatment, I received my first piece of mail from my parents, a generic "get well" card signed with their names. No personal message included. The postmark showed it had been mailed from their Caribbean cruise vacation. I filed it away with the medical bills, too emotionally exhausted to feel anything about the gesture. On a bright June morning, nearly 6 months after my diagnosis, I sat in the familiar chemotherapy suite for my final treatment. Diane, now a friend as much as my nurse, had decorated my chair with streamers and a small banner reading "Last Dance with Chemo." "Ready to ring that bell, warrior?" she asked, connecting the last 4 bag. "More than ready," I replied, my voice stronger than it had been in months. Rachel had taken the day off to be with me, and Mrs. Wilson was bringing Lily directly from school for the bell-ringing ceremony that marked the end of chemotherapy. As the final drugs dripped into my system, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here: the pain, fear, and isolation, but also the unexpected kindness and community I'd found along the way. When the infusion finished, Diane removed my 4 and led me to the bell mounted on the wall. Lily arrived just in time, running to hug me with Mrs. Wilson following behind, carrying a cake she'd baked for the occasion. "Ring it loud, Mommy," Lily cheered. With tears streaming down my face, I grasped the rope and rang the bell 3 times, the clear tone echoing through the oncology department. Patients and staff applauded, many with tears in their eyes. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude, not for being sick, but for discovering my own strength and the goodness in others. The weeks following my final treatment brought gradual improvement. My post-treatment scans showed no evidence of disease, though I would need regular monitoring for years to come. My hair began growing back in soft, downy patches, much to Lily's fascination. My energy returned in small increments, allowing me to resume more normal activities with my daughter. We celebrated my improved health with a weekend trip to a nearby beach, where Lily and I built sandcastles and collected shells. I watched her running along the shoreline, her laughter carried by the ocean breeze, and felt a deep peace despite everything we'd been through. We were going to be okay. Returning to full-time work presented its own challenges. Even with health insurance, the medical bills had accumulated to a staggering amount. I set up payment plans, cut every possible expense, and took on freelance projects during evenings and weekends to slowly chip away at the debt. The financial strain was significant, but compared to facing mortality, it seemed manageable. My new support system remained steadfast. Rachel and I had weekly movie nights. Mrs. Wilson taught Lily to bake while I rested. Other cancer survivors I'd met during treatment became friends who understood the unique challenges of survivorship, the lingering fatigue, the anxiety before each follow-up scan, the way cancer divides life into before and after. Then, on a Sunday afternoon in September, my phone rang with my parents' number. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. They hadn't called once during my entire treatment. Why now? With trembling fingers, I answered. Hello. Ashley, it's Mom. Her voice sounded exactly the same, as if the past 8 months hadn't happened at all. Hi, Mom. I waited, unwilling to make this easy for her. How are you doing? Your father and I were just talking about you. No mention of cancer. No acknowledgement of my treatment. Just casual conversation as if we'd spoken last week. I'm recovering, I said carefully. The chemo finished in June. Oh, that's good to hear. A pause. Is Lily doing well in school? We exchanged a few minutes of superficial conversation about Lily's third-grade activities and the changing seasons. Not once did she ask about my health beyond that initial exchange, or acknowledge that I'd faced a life-threatening illness without their support. Then came the real reason for her call. Ashley, your father and I wanted to talk to you about something. Madison and Tyler are planning their honeymoon to the Maldives in November. It's going to be quite expensive, and we've already contributed so much to the wedding. We wondered if you might be able to help with the honeymoon costs as a wedding gift from you. Their family, after all. The audacity left me speechless. My parents, who hadn't offered a single word of support during my cancer treatment, were asking me to help fund my cousin's luxury honeymoon while I was drowning in medical debt. Mom, I finally managed. I've spent the past 8 months fighting cancer. I have over $30,000 in medical bills. I can't afford to contribute to Madison's honeymoon. Well, everyone has financial challenges, she replied dismissively. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime trip for Madison. Surely you can find a way to help? Perhaps a payment plan? Family supports family, Ashley. The irony of her words nearly made me laugh. Family supports family? Where were you when I was going through chemotherapy? Where were you when I was hospitalized with an infection? Where were you when Lily needed someone to watch her because I was too sick to stand? That's not fair, my mother protested. We sent a card. And we were dealing with the wedding. You know how important that was to the whole family. More important than my cancer? More important than your granddaughter possibly losing her mother. You're being dramatic. You're fine now, aren't you? And Madison really has her heart set on this trip. Just think about it, will you? $5,000 would help tremendously. Your father and I have already contributed $20,000. I'll think about it, I said flatly, knowing my answer would be no but too exhausted to argue further. Wonderful. We'll wait for your call. Give Lily our love. After hanging up, I sat motionless on my couch, trying to process the conversation. The entitlement, the dismissal of my struggle, the complete lack of awareness, it was breathtaking in its callousness. Years of similar treatment had conditioned me to accept their behavior, to make excuses for their emotional unavailability. But cancer had changed me. I was no longer willing to accept scraps of affection while being treated as an afterthought. Lily found me still sitting there 20 minutes later, tears streaming down my face. What's wrong, Mommy? She asked, climbing onto my lap despite being almost too big for it now. I just had a difficult conversation with Grandma, I explained, wiping my tears. Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa ever visit us? Don't they love us? The innocent question broke my heart. How could I explain toxic family dynamics to an 8-year-old? They do love us, sweetie, I said carefully. But sometimes people don't know how to show love the right way. And sometimes they make choices that hurt others without meaning to. Like when Zoe said she didn't want to be my partner for the science project, and it made me sad even though she didn't mean to hurt my feelings. Something like that, I agreed, amazed at her capacity for understanding. Except adults should know better. That night, after Lily was asleep, I broke down completely. The emotional wound my parents had inflicted was far more painful than any physical suffering cancer had caused. I sobbed into my pillow, mourning not just the support I'd never received during my illness, but the loving family I'd never had and would never have. 2 days after my mother's call, I sat across from Dr. Brenner, the therapist I'd been seeing since my diagnosis. Her office was a sanctuary of calm with its soft lighting and comfortable furniture, a place where I could be completely honest about my struggles. "They asked you for money for your cousin's honeymoon?" she repeated, her professional composure momentarily slipping to reveal disbelief. "After everything you've been through?" I nodded, recounting the entire conversation. Dr. Brenner had heard many stories about my parents over the months, but even she seemed shocked by this latest development. "Ashley, we've talked a lot about the pattern of emotional neglect in your relationship with your parents," she said gently. "What do you want to do about this situation?" Part of me wants to send a check with a note saying, "This is the last thing you'll ever get from me," I admitted. Another part wants to just ignore the call and continue with the minimal contact we've maintained. But there's a third part. What's that third part saying? That I need to confront them, face to face. Not just about this request, but about my entire childhood, about their absence during my cancer treatment. I need to say these things to them directly, not just to you or in my journal. Dr. Brenner nodded thoughtfully. That would be a significant step. What would your goal be for such a confrontation? I considered the question carefully. Closure, I think. Not reconciliation. I don't believe they're capable of being the parents I need. But I want to speak my truth after decades of silence. And maybe, I hesitated, maybe I want Lily to see me standing up for myself. She's watching and learning from how I handle relationships. Those are valid reasons, Dr. Brenner affirmed. If you decide to do this, we should discuss how to approach it in a way that protects your emotional well-being. Over the next 2 sessions, we developed a plan. I would visit my parents unannounced, bringing Lily with me. While I didn't intend to use my daughter as a shield, her presence would likely moderate my parents' reactions and remind me to maintain my composure. I would speak honestly but calmly about my experiences, focusing on specific behaviors rather than character attacks. Most importantly, I would set clear boundaries for any future relationship. Dr. Brenner helped me prepare for various potential reactions: denial, deflection, anger, or guilt-tripping. Remember, she emphasized, you can't control how they respond. You can only control what you say and how you react. I decided to gather tangible evidence of what I'd been through: medical bills, treatment schedules, and a letter from my oncologist summarizing my case. Something about having these physical documents made me feel more secure, as if they legitimized my experience in a way my parents couldn't dismiss. Preparing Lily for the visit was delicate. I explained that we were going to visit her grandparents to have an important conversation. "Will they be happy to see us?" she asked hopefully. "I think they'll be surprised," I answered honestly. "And the conversation might be difficult sometimes, but it's important to talk about hard things with people we care about." "Like when you told me about your cancer?" "Exactly like that. Sometimes the truth is hard, but it's still important." The following weekend, we packed overnight bags and loaded up the car for the 3-hour drive to Connecticut. As we left Boston behind, memories flooded back. Childhood car trips in silence, while my father listened to news radio, teenage rides where the only comments from my mother were criticisms of my appearance or behavior. "Did you live in Grandma and Grandpa's house when you were little like me?" Lily asked as we drove through increasingly affluent suburbs. "I did," I replied, "until I went to college." "Was it fun?" I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her innocent curiosity piercing my heart. "Some parts were fun," I said carefully. "I had a nice bedroom and a backyard with a swing set. Like our apartment, but bigger?" "Much bigger," I confirmed. "But you know, Lily, a house is just a building. What makes a home special is the love inside it. And our apartment has more love than any mansion could hold." She seemed satisfied with that answer and returned to the tablet game she'd been playing. As we neared my parents' neighborhood, anxiety tightened my chest. Was I making a mistake? Would this confrontation heal anything, or just create more pain? I almost turned around 3 times, but the memory of my mother's dismissive tone when asking for Madison's honeymoon money strengthened my resolve. We pulled into my parents' driveway at just past noon. Their house looked exactly as it always had, perfectly maintained colonial with manicured landscaping, not a blade of grass out of place. A monument to appearances. It's so big, Lily exclaimed, unbuckling her seatbelt eagerly. Remember what we talked about? I reminded her gently. This might be a serious conversation. She nodded solemnly. I'll be good, Mommy. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell, Lily's hand clasped firmly in mine. After a moment, the door swung open to reveal my mother, her surprise evident as she registered our presence. Ashley? Lily? What are you doing here? She was dressed impeccably as always, pearl earrings catching the sunlight. We came to visit, I said simply. May we come in? Of course, she stammered, stepping back. Richard. Ashley and Lily are here, she called toward the back of the house. We entered the familiar foyer with its gleaming hardwood and tasteful artwork. Nothing had changed since my last visit, except now there were several framed photos from Madison's wedding prominently displayed on the entryway table. My father appeared from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking startled by our unexpected arrival. This is a surprise, he said, awkwardly patting Lily's head instead of hugging her. We moved to the living room, where Lily immediately gravitated toward the grand piano that had been purely decorative throughout my childhood. No one in our family played. Can I touch it? She asked, looking at my mother. Carefully, my mother cautioned. It's very expensive. An uncomfortable silence fell as we settled on the formal couches no one ever really sat on. My parents exchanged confused glances, clearly wondering about the purpose of our surprise visit. We were just about to have lunch, my mother finally said. I can set 2 more places. That would be nice, I replied, not yet ready to dive into the real reason for our visit. Over a tense lunch of cold sandwiches and fruit, my parents directed most of their questions to Lily, asking about school and her hobbies while carefully avoiding any mention of my health or treatment. I let them lead the conversation, observing how they interacted with my daughter, polite but distant, like talking to a neighbor's child rather than their only grandchild. After lunch, while Lily was occupied looking at a butterfly that had landed on the window, my mother brought up Madison's honeymoon again. Have you had a chance to think about what we discussed? She asked in a lowered voice. Madison and Tyler are finalizing their bookings this week. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. My father went to answer it, returning moments later with Madison and her new husband in tow. Look who stopped by, he announced, more animation in his voice than he'd shown since our arrival. Madison froze when she saw me, her expression shifting from surprise to shock as she took in my appearance. Though my hair had started growing back, it was still very short and my weight loss was evident. Ashley, she gasped. I didn't know you were visiting. It was a spontaneous decision, I explained, rising to hug her. Despite everything, I was genuinely happy to see my cousin. You look. She trailed off, clearly struggling with what to say about my changed appearance. Like I've been through cancer treatment? I supplied gently. It's okay. You can acknowledge it. Madison's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was this serious. When Aunt Catherine mentioned you were having some health problems, I had no idea. Her words confirmed what I'd suspected. My parents had downplayed my illness to the extended family, perhaps to avoid shifting attention from Madison's wedding. Tyler, whom I was meeting for the first time, shook my hand warmly. Madison's told me a lot about you. I'm sorry to hear about your health challenges. The 6 of us settled in the living room, the atmosphere growing increasingly tense as Madison continued to ask questions about my treatment and recovery, questions my parents should have been asking months ago. Did you have surgery? Madison asked. Yes, lumpectomy followed by 6 months of chemotherapy and radiation, I answered. 6 months. Madison looked shocked. That's your entire wedding planning period. You were going through chemo when we got married. I nodded, aware of my parents shifting uncomfortably on their couch. Why didn't you tell me? Madison directed this question to my mother. You said Ashley couldn't make it to the wedding because of work commitments. My mother's cheeks flushed. We didn't want to worry you during your special time. And Ashley assured us she was managing fine. That's not true, I said quietly but firmly. I never said that because you never asked. When I called to tell you about my diagnosis, you said you were too busy with wedding preparations to talk about it. Madison looked horrified. You knew she had cancer during the wedding? An uncomfortable silence descended on the room. My parents exchanged nervous glances, clearly unprepared for their carefully constructed narrative to unravel so publicly. It wasn't like that, my father finally said, straightening his posture defensively. Ashley caught us at a very busy time. We sent a card. 3 months after my diagnosis, I added. Postmarked from your cruise. Madison looked increasingly distressed. I don't understand. Ashley, your family. How could? She turned to my parents. And now you're asking about the honeymoon fund? When she's been sick. My mother's face hardened. Madison, you don't understand the whole situation. Ashley has always been difficult. Dramatic. Everyone has health problems they deal with. Cancer isn't just a health problem, Aunt Catherine, Madison said incredulously. My father interjected, financial difficulties are part of life too. Ashley chose a career in graphic design instead of something more stable. These medical bills she's complaining about are the result of her choices. Their dismissiveness ignited a familiar pain, but this time, instead of shrinking from it, I felt a surge of clarity and purpose. This was exactly why I had come, to finally address decades of emotional neglect head-on. Before I could speak, Lily, who had been quietly drawing in a corner, approached my parents with her backpack. She had been listening to every word. My mommy was really sick, she said solemnly. She lost all her hair and threw up a lot. Sometimes she was too tired to read me bedtime stories. Lily, I began, concerned about her inserting herself into this tense adult conversation. But she continued, unzipping her backpack and pulling out a folder I hadn't seen her pack. My doctor gave me this to show you. With small, determined hands, she held out a sealed envelope to my mother. Bewildered, my mother took it, looking to me for explanation. I didn't know she had that, I said honestly. My mother opened the envelope and pulled out several pages. I recognized them immediately. The comprehensive treatment summary my oncologist had prepared for my records, detailing my diagnosis, the surgeries, the chemical compositions of my chemotherapy, the radiation treatments, the hospitalizations, the complications, and the prognosis. Attached was a personal letter from Dr. Miller that I had never seen before. As my parents read in silence, their hands began to visibly tremble. My father reached for his reading glasses, as if the small print might somehow transform the devastating reality documented on those clinical pages. The room was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Madison moved to sit beside me, taking my hand in silent support. Tyler looked profoundly uncomfortable, a stranger witnessing an intensely private family implosion. Where did you get this, Lily? I asked softly. Dr. Miller gave it to me when I went to the bathroom during your last appointment, she whispered back. She said it might help Grandma and Grandpa understand. My heart swelled with love for my perceptive, compassionate daughter and gratitude for my doctor's unexpected intervention. My mother's face had lost all color as she reached the final page. Stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, high-grade malignancy, immunocompromised, life-threatening complications. She read disconnected phrases aloud, her voice hollow. My father removed his glasses, his hands unsteady. Ashley, we didn't realize. You didn't want to realize, I corrected him gently. I told you I had cancer. That should have been enough for you to ask questions, to offer help, to show up. I shouldn't have needed medical documentation to prove I deserved your concern. The letter says you had no family support system, my mother said, her voice small. That can't be right. We're your parents. Being parents biologically doesn't make you a support system, I replied. Where were you when I lost my hair? Where were you when I couldn't get out of bed to care for Lily? Where were you when I was hospitalized with an infection that could have killed me? We didn't know, my father repeated weakly. You didn't ask, I countered. And this isn't just about the cancer. This is about my entire life. The piano recitals you missed, the art shows you didn't attend, the college graduation you left early. The way you compare me to Madison, the way you criticize my career, my parenting, my life choices. The way you barely know your granddaughter. That's not fair, my mother protested, though with less conviction than before. We provided for you. You had everything you needed. I had things, Mom. A roof, clothes, food, education. But I didn't have you. Not emotionally. Not when it mattered. Madison, who had been listening intently, spoke up. I had no idea things were like this, Ashley. All these years, I thought you were just independent, that you preferred keeping your distance. I never knew you felt excluded. It wasn't your fault, I assured her. And I've never resented you for being the favorite. You were a child too. I'm so sorry about the wedding, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. If I'd known you were going through cancer treatment, I would have postponed everything. I know you would have, I smiled sadly. That's the difference. You would have shown up for me. They never have. My father stood abruptly, pacing the room. This is absurd. We may not have been perfect parents, but to accuse us of what? Neglect? We gave you every advantage. Except love, Lily said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the tension. Mommies and daddies are supposed to give hugs and say, I love you, and come when you're scared. That's what my mommy does. My mother gasped softly at being schooled in parenting by an 8-year-old. My father stopped pacing, staring at his granddaughter as if seeing her for the first time. Out of the mouths of babes, Tyler murmured, breaking his long silence. I took a deep breath, centering myself for what I needed to say next. I didn't come here to punish you or to make you feel guilty. I came because I needed to speak my truth after a lifetime of silence. Cancer taught me that life is too short for pretense. I looked directly at my parents. I don't expect you to suddenly become the parents I needed. People don't change fundamentally at your age. But going forward, I need honesty between us. I need acknowledgement of the past. And I need respect for my boundaries. What boundaries? My father asked warily. I won't tolerate being an afterthought in your lives while you expect financial or emotional support from me. I won't expose Lily to the same conditional love I experienced. And I won't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. So you're cutting us off? My mother's voice trembled. No, I said gently. I'm offering you a relationship based on reality instead of pretense. You can be part of our lives, but only if you can respect these boundaries. The choice is yours. A heavy silence fell over the room. Madison squeezed my hand supportively, while Lily returned to my side, leaning against me with complete trust. Finally, my father spoke, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. We never meant to hurt you, Ashley. I believe that, I replied. But intent doesn't negate impact. And decades of small hurts create deep wounds. My mother was crying quietly now, the carefully applied mascara creating dark trails down her cheeks. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. Start by listening, I suggested. Really listening. Not to respond or defend, but to understand. For the next hour, we talked more honestly than we ever had before. I shared specific memories of feeling abandoned or unseen, while my parents alternated between defensive justifications and moments of genuine remorse. Madison and Tyler excused themselves to give us privacy, taking Lily to the backyard to play. It wasn't a miraculous transformation. My father still tried to rationalize much of their behavior, and my mother repeatedly brought up her own difficult childhood as explanation. But for perhaps the first time, they were truly hearing me, forced to confront the reality of our relationship by the medical evidence they couldn't dismiss and the innocent observations of their granddaughter they couldn't deny. As the afternoon light began to fade, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had said what I came to say. I had been heard, if not fully understood. And most importantly, I had modeled for Lily the power of speaking one's truth with dignity. We should get going, I finally said, standing up. It's a long drive back to Boston. You could stay the night, my mother offered tentatively. Your old room is still there. I shook my head. Not this time. We have a hotel reservation nearby. But thank you for the offer. As we gathered our things and called Lily in from the yard, my father awkwardly approached me with the medical documents. Keep them, I said. Read them again when you're alone. Try to understand what I went through without you. He nodded, folding the papers carefully and placing them in his shirt pocket, close to his heart, an unconsciously symbolic gesture that didn't escape my notice. Madison and Tyler returned with Lily, who was proudly holding a bouquet of flowers she'd picked from my mother's garden. Cousin Madison said I could take these for our hotel room, she announced. They're beautiful, I told her, deliberately not looking at my mother, who I knew would be irritated by the destruction of her perfect garden beds. As we said our goodbyes at the door, my mother hesitantly reached out to hug me. I accepted the embrace, noting how stiff and unfamiliar it felt. When was the last time she had hugged me? I couldn't remember. We'll do better, she whispered. I hope so, I replied, not making promises I wasn't sure they could keep. We drove away as dusk settled over the neighborhood, Lily waving enthusiastically from the back seat while my parents and Madison's family stood in the driveway, a tableau of complicated relationships and uncertain futures. Did I do good, Mommy? Lily asked as we turned onto the main road. You did amazing, sweetie, I assured her, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. I'm so proud of you. Are you still mad at Grandma and Grandpa? I considered the question carefully. I'm not mad, exactly. I'm sad about some things that happened in the past. But today was a good start toward making things better. She nodded sagely, as if she understood complex family dynamics far beyond her years. Mrs. Wilson says sometimes families are like puzzles where the pieces don't fit right away. You have to turn them around a lot. I smiled at her wisdom. Mrs. Wilson is very smart. As we drove through the gathering darkness toward our hotel, I felt neither triumph nor defeat, only a profound sense of having finally stood my ground on territory I'd surrendered long ago. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed my voice. The drive home to Boston the next day felt symbolic, moving forward, leaving the weight of unspoken truths behind. Lily chatted happily about the hotel pool and the pancake breakfast, seemingly unaffected by the emotional intensity of our visit. Children are remarkably resilient, I thought, glancing at her in the rearview mirror as she sang along to the radio. Are we going to visit Grandma and Grandpa again soon? She asked during a break in the song. I'm not sure, sweetie. We'll see. I think they were sad, she observed. But maybe now they understand better. Maybe, I agreed, marveling at her perception. How would you feel about going back sometime? She considered this seriously. Okay, I guess. But I like our apartment better. It feels more like home. That's because it is home, I assured her, reaching back to squeeze her knee. Home is where we're loved for exactly who we are. As we settled back into our routine in Boston, I found myself feeling lighter despite the emotional exhaustion of the confrontation. Speaking my truth after decades of silence had been liberating, regardless of whether my parents could fully understand or change. For days after our visit, my phone rang with Madison's number. I've been thinking about you nonstop, she said when I answered. I had no idea what you were going through, Ashley. I feel terrible about the wedding timing, about not being there for you. You didn't know, I assured her. And it wasn't your responsibility. Still, I wish I'd reached out more. After you left, Tyler and I had a long talk with your parents. I've never seen them so shaken. Aunt Catherine actually cried, like really cried, not just the delicate tears she does at weddings. I wasn't sure how to respond to this revelation. My mother's emotional displays had always been carefully controlled, appropriate for the setting. I told them Tyler and I would pay for our own honeymoon, Madison continued. It was wrong of them to ask you for money, especially after everything. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved by her support. That means a lot. I'd like to visit you and Lily sometime, if that's okay. Get to know my cousin again. And meet these amazing friends who helped you through your treatment. We'd love that, I told her, realizing I meant it. A week later, a text message arrived from my father, brief, awkward, but unprecedented. Your mother and I have been discussing our relationship with you and Lily. We realize we've made many mistakes. Would like to do better if you'll allow it. It wasn't a profound apology or an admission of the specific ways they'd failed me, but from my emotionally constipated father, it was significant. I replied simply, I appreciate that. Let's talk next week. The following day, a package arrived for Lily. A beautiful illustrated book about a girl whose mother is fighting cancer, with a note from my mother saying she'd been researching children's literature about serious illness. It was perhaps the most thoughtful gift she'd ever sent. These small gestures didn't erase the past or magically transform our relationship, but they suggested a willingness to try that I hadn't seen before. I approached this potential shift with cautious optimism, protective of both my heart and Lily's. 1 month after our confrontation, I attended my 1-year cancer-free checkup. Dr. Miller confirmed that all my scans remained clear, though I would need regular monitoring for years to come. You've been through hell and back, she observed, reviewing my file. How are things with your family since our little intervention? I smiled, remembering Lily's delivery of the medical documents. Better. Not perfect, but better. Thank you for that, by the way. I never asked Lily to bring those papers. Sometimes children are our best advocates, Dr. Miller replied. And sometimes adults need medical documentation to believe what should be obvious from looking at someone they love. As summer turned to fall, our life settled into a new normal. My hair grew back in soft curls, different from my pre-cancer straight locks. My energy returned enough to enjoy long walks with Lily and occasional bike rides through the park. I continued therapy with Dr. Brenner, working through the complex emotions of survivorship and family reconciliation. We created new traditions with our chosen family, Sunday dinners with Rachel and her boyfriend, baking lessons with Mrs. Wilson, monthly meetups with other cancer survivors I'd befriended during treatment. These people had seen me at my worst and loved me anyway, a stark contrast to my parents, who had only ever seemed comfortable with a perfect facade. In October, Lily's school held a special presentation where students spoke about their heroes. When her turn came, Lily stood confidently before her classmates and teachers. My hero is my mom, she began, holding up a photo of the two of us. Last year, she got really sick with cancer, but she never stopped being my mom. Even when she was throwing up from her medicine or too tired to walk, she still read me stories and helped me with homework. She taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared. Mrs. Wilson, who had come to watch the presentation, squeezed my hand as tears streamed down my face. This beautiful, resilient child was my greatest achievement, my reason for fighting through the darkest days. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, my parents called to invite us for the holiday. I hesitated, remembering the previous year's gathering where Madison's engagement had overshadowed everything else. We understand if you have other plans, my mother said, surprising me with her lack of pressure. But we'd very much like to see you and Lily. After discussing it with Dr. Brenner and more importantly with Lily, I agreed to a shortened visit, just Thanksgiving Day itself, not the extended weekend they'd proposed. Setting boundaries felt healthy, not rebellious or ungrateful as it once would have. The Thanksgiving visit was awkward but not disastrous. My parents made visible efforts. My mother had prepared Lily's favorite dessert. My father took her to the park instead of retreating to his study. They asked careful questions about my recovery and listened to the answers without minimizing or changing the subject. It wasn't the warm, effortless family gathering of movies, but it was progress. As winter approached, bringing the anniversary of my diagnosis, I found myself reflecting on the profound changes of the past year. Cancer had nearly killed me, but it had also forced me to confront the unhealthy patterns I'd accepted my entire life. It had revealed both the emptiness of certain family ties and the depth of friendships I'd undervalued. Do you regret the confrontation? Dr. Brenner asked during our December session. Not at all, I replied without hesitation. I regret not doing it sooner. All those years of swallowing my feelings, making excuses for their behavior, pretending everything was fine, what did that accomplish? It just enabled the pattern to continue. And what about forgiveness? She inquired. Is that something you're working toward? I considered the question carefully. I think I'm already there in some ways. Not the kind of forgiveness that pretends the hurt never happened or that excuses their behavior, but the kind that acknowledges the reality and chooses to move forward anyway. The kind that's for my peace, not theirs. Dr. Brenner nodded approvingly. That's the healthiest kind. As Christmas approached, Madison and Tyler visited for a weekend. We took Lily ice skating, toured the holiday lights, and stayed up late talking after she went to bed. Madison shared stories about my parents' evident soul-searching since our confrontation, my father researching family therapy options, my mother joining a grandparents' support group. They're trying, Madison assured me. In their own way, at their own pace. It may never be what you deserved as a child, but it's something. Something is better than nothing, I agreed. And Lily deserves to know her grandparents, the real people behind the perfect facade. On Christmas Eve, a full year after my world had been upended by cancer, Lily and I sat by our small tree in our cozy apartment, drinking hot chocolate and reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." The tree lights reflected in her eyes as she snuggled against me, safe and secure in the knowledge of being deeply loved. I'm glad you're not sick anymore, Mommy, she said sleepily. Me too, baby, I whispered, kissing her forehead. Me too. Later, after she was asleep, I stood by our living room window watching snow begin to fall, covering the city in a blanket of pristine white. The year had brought profound loss and unexpected gifts, terrible pain and extraordinary love. I had lost my hair but found my voice. I had faced mortality and discovered what truly matters in life. The journey wasn't over. Cancer would always be a shadow lurking at the edges of my life, ready to cause panic with every unexplained pain or abnormal test result. My relationship with my parents would always be complicated, a work in progress rather than a Hallmark movie resolution. But standing there in the quiet of Christmas Eve, watching snow transform the world outside, I felt a deep peace settle over me. I had survived. Not just cancer, but the lifelong emotional neglect that had preceded it. I had protected Lily from repeating my patterns of silence and accommodation. I had built a life filled with genuine connection rather than appearances. Sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the family you're born into. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to speak your truth. And sometimes the deepest healing comes not from forgetting the wounds of the past, but from finally acknowledging them. What has been your experience with family during difficult times? Have you ever had to set boundaries with loved ones? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join our community of truth tellers and survivors. Remember that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by the strength and authenticity you bring to the world. Thank you for sharing this journey with me today, and may you find the courage to speak your own truth, whatever it may be.